1.
Good morning, everyone. Hi,
Hello.
guys. We're here today for Cuppo Capital. I got me a new mug. You got a new mug too?
I've got mine.
Today's theme muggle is "Don't let the muggles keep you down." So I figured it was a good mug for a Friday.
I love that.
Well, I'm excited. It's Friday. We're gonna spill some tea on what's going on down at the Capitol again, right?
That's right. It's amazing. We're in April already and we're getting close. I know there's some things happening, but I thought I'd take this moment from the last update that went out to follow up on some updates. So maybe why don't we start with some minor floor actions that are being done. Can you talk a little bit about that so we can be more aware?
Yeah, definitely. So just real quick, in case we have new watchers to today's Cuppo Capital, I'm Betty McIntyre. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Community Relations at the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing. And with me every Friday, Cuppo Capital, is Becca Bailey, our community engagement liaison. So I just thought we should probably, tell people who we are, since it's we've been increasing in our viewership, which is awesome. So
Yes, ready to dive in. Forgot to do the important groundwork. Sorry about that.
oh no, it's all good, right? Because we just keep things chill here. So, but yeah, so let's dive into your question. Like you said, what's been going on, any floor action that we've had. So this week at the legislature, we pretty much have not had any floor action. Same as last week. Committees are done. And so appropriations are over. And right now we're just kind of in like limbo because we're on budget watch. But literally, I think the Senate met every day last week, but they really didn't do much action. The House met twice, I think, last week, and it was pretty much just like ceremonial points of privilege, checking in activity. It's like nothing, no business has really been happening on the floor.
I just thought of something. We have a new public policy and community engagement director on board with us.
Mm-hmm.
Did she happen to mention that you and her and Sherry Collins were at the Capitol and you had a chance to go on the floor? Can you talk a little bit about that? What was up with that?
Yeah, definitely. So as folks know, that we introduced Nikki Sukup, who will be coming on coming on to replace me as the Director of Public Policy and Community Relations here in a couple of months. But so she flew in from where she's living right now. I happen to be in town as well, doing some legislative lobbying work, and we were giving, Sherry and I were giving Nikki a tour of the legislature and the Capitol. And we were in the audience up in the gallery over at the House, and Representative Longden from LD24, who is a big champion of disability rights and a huge champion for the commission, saw us up in the gallery, gave us an introduction spontaneously. We weren't expecting it, as part of her personal points of personal privilege, and then invited us down on the House floor. So, and it was pretty cool, because you have to be invited to go to the House on the floor, and it was pretty awesome, and I just thought, what a great way for me to, kind of pass the torch off to Nikki and allow her to have that experience coming to Arizona. It was really awesome of Representative Longden, who's the minority co-leader over at, over in the House. So it was great. It was awesome.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That was a really nice picture that you put out for the update. That was really nice. Definitely, Longden is a major champion for the deaf community, especially with our deaf and hard of hearing and blind community. I really love her. All right. Also, I noticed recently on the legislative update, you mentioned something in regards to lessons learned. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was, me having fun with the fact that the legislature didn't do any floor action really at all. And I think I put in the update, it's because the lesson that they learned was the past few years, while we've been waiting for the budget, the House and the Senate both were doing consistent floor counters. So they were third reading and final reading bills, and they were transferring them back over to the original chamber, then getting transmitted to the governor for signature. And several times in the past, Governor Ducey has been like, no, he vetoed, I think last year he vetoed 27 bills. Not because he didn't like them, but because he's like, I want a budget. And he's done that several times to tell the legislature, don't send me anything until I get a budget. So I think after, so many years of that happening, both the Senate and the House said, okay, well, we're not going to continue doing that. So he, and risk the chance of him vetoing any of these bills again, and then having to, do all these things later in the session to get those bills back through the process. But this year he didn't do it for the budget. That's my perspective. My perspective is that the governor really wants his repeal and replace of the progressive flat tax that was passed last year. So my inside political brain thinks that this has nothing to do with budget. Of course, the governor wants a budget, but he's sitting on a $5 billion surplus. His legacy is pretty much solidified in the fact that he has accomplished what he set out to do, which was to have $1 billion rainy day fund, which we have that in Arizona. But the other piece of this, and why I think we're just waiting, is the governor wants the flat tax to be part of his legacy. This is his last year as governor. And that's something that he wants to, we have a saying, put a feather in our cap. And I think that's the last feather he wants in his cap of what he's done for Arizona. So that makes sense.
Interesting. Thank you for that history lesson as far as what usually is done and what has been done. That makes sense. So like you mentioned about the repeal and replace tax. So regarding the budget, is there anything else we're looking at as far as the budget watch goes?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the repeal and replace, I don't know if that can't come as part of the budget. But that's going to be its own standalone bill. But we need that language and the votes ready to have that. So when it is introduced, they have everything lined up, that they have the vote secured, they have everything they need to, so they can get that through and up to the governor. But they have to do that first, because if whatever this repeal and replace will look like will have an impact on how potential revenue for the budget going forward. So it's kind of like we can't do the budget yet until we do the replace and repeal, because it's like almost putting the cart before the horse type of thing. So they kind of have to happen at the same time. And I'll be very curious to see what's going on with that repeal and replace. And the reason why is because of the Arizona Supreme Court sided with the Prop 208 folks. So, on the budget watch side, I'm curious. We have one Republican. I think I talked about this last time. I'm not sure, but over in the Senate, we have one majority lead. So it's a 16-15 split over in the Senate. So if you have one holdout on the budget, it can really mess things up. And so when you have these discussions happening, anybody at the Senate can pretty much say, well, I want this to be funded. I want that to be funded. And so did we talk about Senator Boyer last time around his $800 million ask? Did we talk about that? I can't remember.
I don't remember talking about that. Boyer with 800 million. No, I don't remember.
Like, So just in case,
we talked about so many different things.
We do. So just for our viewers, in case I have not said this, and maybe it's only happened in my head, because that's very possible. So, for example, Senator Boyer would like to fund education at $800 million. Now, there are, of course, some strings to that. He wants several of that 800 million to go to ESA vouchers, which I'm curious about, because the voters passed a voter initiative that said no more expansion on on ESA vouchers. So don't understand how that ask can be granted. But I think the House is ready to drop a budget, but they can't drop the budget until the Senate. They have the votes in the Senate. So it's going to be interesting how this all pans out. I think we may be sitting here for a while, Becca, just enjoying our coffee, just kind of talking how our weekend's going to go here soon.
For our audience, do you mind explaining a little bit about more about the ESA vouchers and what that is? Maybe if you can just sort of do a brief summary.
I will do the best I can, and I'll do it in a very simplified way. ESA vouchers are essentially, it's a voucher. You take a portion of funding from the public school funding pot, and a parent can take their voucher if they're eligible under, there's certain criteria that a student is eligible for to receive a voucher. And they can take that voucher and go to any charter school or private school with that voucher. Primarily, a voucher is used to go from a public education to a private education. So, because charter schools are funded through the public school dollars as well. So, and there's a lot of controversies around ESAs. The voters about 2-3 years ago in Arizona said that ESAs cannot be expanded other than what they were intentionally designed for, which were for students with disabilities. And it's only certain disabilities that qualify for that. So, and primarily the Republicans have fought to continuing to expand that pot of who's eligible for an ESA.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Okay, the only thing I can think of is, are there any updates in regards to signing of any bills?
Well, the governor has signed 135 bills so far. One of the bills, there's only been a handful that we followed that he has signed, that just kind of in the peripheral, like in the background, that we monitored because, for example, the organ donor disability bill that we're tracking, that one we're tracking because it specifically stated that any individual with a disability is eligible for organ donors and, you know, life-saving services. So, but yeah, it's really just kind of been, we're just waiting and seeing, which, you know, of that 135 bills that he has signed, several of them, I mean, I wouldn't say several, a handful were some of the controversial election bills that we're definitely going to have to provide some voter education on. I think this summer, before the primary happens in August, just so folks know, you know, what to expect, but, you know, but also some of the other controversial election bills have not gone through. So, I mean, and that's the thing about Budget Watch. Once we get a budget, they're going to pass that budget, and then we have to figure out, are they going to finish doing the rest of the bills that are waiting, or are they just going to sign die once budget and then everything else has to come back? Who knows? Oh. Yeah.
Okay. It looks like things are still wrapping up towards the end here. You know, for our audience.
No, yeah, I don't think it's wrapping up at all. We're just hanging out. It's like we're taking a break.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we're just taking a break. And I think that's important to kind of clarify to folks watching, is that this is the time of the year where we're just kind of just sitting here enjoying our coffee, and just kind of, right, twiddling our thumbs, waiting.
Twiddling our thumbs, yes.
What's going on? So
okay.
Where we're at.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. And you know, one other thing I want to let our audience know, if you don't subscribe to our legislative alerts, if you have any questions or anything that has to do with anything in general with what's happening as far as terms, even the legislative process itself, please feel free to email us and reach out to us and our office, and get involved in our biweekly capital information.
Yeah, I agree, Becca. The more people who subscribe, the more people who view, the more involved, you know, you can be, and the more of a, it's just important. You know, civic engagement is super, super important. We've talked about that before: registering to vote, getting to the polls, or early voting. Being informed makes you a really educated citizen, and that's, you know, we think that's important.
Yes, it's definitely important. You know, that's one of our priorities in regards to voting. It's important that our citizens are registered to vote. So if you need any information or assistance with that, please feel free to reach out to us for that. And also, we want to make sure that any of our voting materials and voting awareness materials are out there, and work with different entities to make sure that we have voter materials on various topics and increase more engagement.
Exactly. I mean, just got to do it, especially this year. It's an election year. So you got to decide who's going to be our next governor. who's going to be our next superintendent of public instruction? We've got 90 seats at the legislature, 30 in the Senate and 60 in the House. Everybody is up for election as far as it goes for state races. So it's really important. Yeah. And, because I know we have a couple of minutes here, I just read an article today because Arizona does redistricting every 10 years. So that is what we redraw our legislative and congressional districts. So FYI, everybody, your legislative and congressional district will change this coming, August and November election. So just prepare yourself. But I just read this article that about 10 folks who used to be former state senators and state legislatures are seeking to come back to the legislature. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, well, we have term limits, but that doesn't mean that after a long break, they can come back. And so we're going to see some familiar faces coming back down to the Capitol. Maybe, who knows? They have to win their election, but I thought that was really interesting.
Quick question in regards to redistricting again. Suppose I'm in a certain district, for example, say Longdon's, Representative Longdon's district. Let's say that district changes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the paperwork that's sent to me will reflect that? And will I know who to vote for? How will citizens know the changes and be aware of that?
That's a great question, Becca. It really is a great question. So every person who's registered to vote in the state, in their current residence, that's the key. You have to be registered to vote in your current residence. Their county election official will automatically mail them a new voter ID card. And your voter ID card tells you what your LD and what your congressional district is. So when you get the new card, you'll know if your district has stayed the same or if it's different. So then that's the first part. The second part is when you get your ballot. So if you've requested a ballot to be sent to you early, or if you go to the polls, it's the same ballot. The ballot you're going to get is going to have only the races for the districts that you're registered to. So if you're LD, let's say you used to be LD4, and now because of redistricting, your voter ID card says you're an LD7, your ballot is going to have only the races for LD7.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that.
And I think it's important. That's the reason why that's also a good question is because we have a lot of folks who are engaged in their, local politics, and they know that, Nancy Bardo from the Senate is her state senator. But because of redistricting, Nancy may actually be, her new district could be literally a different district than yours. And I think sometimes that confuses folks. So that's why it's really important to pay attention to what your new district is, and then go out and seek out information, read your voter education guides, or watch the voter education guides. We're going to be doing that also in ASL with Clean Elections again this year. So that's how you'll find out who your candidates are.
Got it. I'm looking forward to getting that information. The voter education guides are very pivotal, very important. they're even better in sign language and with captioning. So that's great. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay, well, Betty, do you have anything else to add before we wrap this up?
No, I just want people to go out and have a great Friday.
Right. Same here. We've got our mugs.
That's right. Remember, don't let the muggles bring you down, folks. Because you're magical.
That's
you're
right.
all magical.
That's right. All right. Bye-bye, all. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye, Becca. Thanks for joining me. And we'll see you next time at Capo Capital.